This video is brought to you by Mammoth Headwear. One size fits big.
Hey everybody, it's Jimmy from the DIY and Digital, and today we are doing part 3 of the MRROne project railroad build. Welcome back everybody. First of all, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any updates like this video. So today is part 3 of our MRROne project railroad, our 2x4 in scale layout. And what we're doing today is we're doing a lot of scenery work. We're also going to be installing some lights. So this is going to be a whole lot of fun, a lot of stuff to get to today. So let's just go ahead and dive right in.
In order to begin any real scenic track work, we need to get the grade crossings in place. For this, I will be using Blair Line's wood grade crossings. These are reasonably priced and look great. If you would like to make your own DIY crossings, I have 2 ways I have done in past videos. I will link those below. I start by making a wash of India ink and brown paint. Now I really mix this to where it's just to my liking. I then dab the crossings using a foam brush dipped in the mixture. This is really just to give the wood a slightly aged look before we install them. Now we test fit the pieces. The curves I'm using are for 9 3/4 inch radius track. I run a car over them with my hand to make sure that they fit. And now I just take some simple white glue and set the centerpiece in place. Once it is dry, I test it again to make sure that it still works. I repeat this process all over the layout. I have 4 total crossings, including 1 double crossing, which has 2 of those. Now it's time for the roads. And for the roads, I just use Spackle for this. It's a very simple and very inexpensive material to use, and you don't need much of it to make good roads. I start by scoring the rough path of the road using my building placements for reference. I plan on placing and painting the road before any scenery is put down. I used the Blair Line pieces that the crossing came in as a template for road width. Now it's time for the spackle itself, and you'll want to stir it up since it tends to settle a little bit when it's in its container. I like to put on some gloves and use my hands for this part. This gives me the most control in placing the spackle, and you want a lot of control here that you just don't get with a spatula. I start spreading the spackle away from the track and slowly work my way up to it. Remember, we will be painting the spackle, so don't worry too much about the white. Right now I am building up to the crossing, and you do want to be careful when you're doing this because it can be difficult to get off the track once you have it on there and it's dry. I personally feel comfortable edging the track freehand, but if you don't, I highly recommend just using some painter's tape to protect the track. It is also important that we get a solid base because we need to put the outer edges of those Blair Line crossings into the spackle. So we're going to want to push the spackle right up to the outer edge of the rail. Now for this double crossing, we are going to have to spackle the middle section. And this is a tricky section, so you just need to be extra careful and mindful of where the spackle is going. Again, this is why I like using my hands versus a spatula. Lastly, I do the edge. Notice I'm not smoothing out the spackle too much here. This is because this will be done with sanding a lot later. Now it's time for the rest of the road. I generously apply spackle along the marked path of the road. I have 2 more crossings to build the road up to, and I use the same technique that I did before. When I get to the industrial areas, I simply apply spackle everywhere. The road boundaries can be accomplished with lines for this part. Once the spackle has begun to set, I place the outer beams of the crossings in the spackle next to the track. Remember to make these nice and snug up against the outer portion of the rail. A little bead of white glue to mix with the spackle also helps as well. Now it's time to ballast the roadbed. I will be using Arizona Rock and Minerals in scale Norfolk Southern CSX Bright Gray Ballast. This is my first time using Arizona Rock and Mineral Company, and I have to say that I am thoroughly impressed by the quality of their product. I start by laying a bead of white glue along the base of the track. I will say that ballasting Kato Unitrack is definitely one of the weak points and drawbacks of using Kato Track versus traditional track. It is more difficult. You'll notice that I'm not painting the track in this case. I didn't want to do that for this being a beginner type layout. If you would like to see a tutorial where I paint and ballast the track, I'll link that right up here. I dump the ballast slowly along the middle of the track. I tap the bag to spread the ballast evenly. Next, I use a dry brush to spread the ballast and even it out. I brush some of the overspill back onto the roadbed and continue to poke and prod until I get the look that I want. Next, it's time to glue. Now in normal times, I would be using 70% or 90% isopropyl alcohol to release the surface tension before putting my Scenic cement mixture on there. But with the pandemic, IPA is in short supply. So I will be using what's called wet water, which is water with a few drops of dish soap in it. This works the same, but can take up to several days to fully dry versus a matter of hours for IPA. I soak the ballast and then apply a 50-50 white glue water mixture to the track to glue it down. Ballasting is a tedious process, and it is arguably one of the most tedious processes in building a model railroad, which is why I recommend breaking it up into working in sections. On this layout, I have broken up my sections based on the 3 grade crossings. Once everything has been glued in place, I leave it to dry, which may take a day or two in this case. This video is brought to you by Mammoth Headwear. One size fits big.
So one thing you've probably never noticed about me, but if you go and look back at my videos, is that I never wear hats. Now, you may think that's probably because Jimmy doesn't like hats. I love hats. I think hats are amazing. The problem is that I have a big head. I'm somewhere between a 7.5 and an 8 on the measurement of my head. And that means that the vast majority of hats out there either don't fit me well or don't fit me at all. So it's really tough for me to find a hat. So for the most part, I just have to invest in a lot of sunscreen so that I can protect my head. So when Taylor over at Mammoth Headwear reached out to me asking me to try his hats that were designed for people with big heads, I was intrigued, and he sent me over this classic snapback, and I have to say that this is literally one of the most comfortable, if not the most comfortable hats, period, I've worn. It is the most comfortable ball cap style hat that I have worn. I literally looked at my wife as soon as I put this on and I said, this is the most comfortable hat that I've ever worn. And I'm not exaggerating. This is the first ball cap type hat that I feel like I could wear all day and I would be comfortable in it. So if you are a well endowed in the head person like me and you would love to wear hats but you don't know where to find a good hat, or if you have someone in your family that wants to wear hats but has a big head like me and hats just aren't comfortable, check out Mammoth Headwear. I have a link to their website in the description below. They're absolutely amazing. I mean, this is literally the first hat I've been comfortable in. I can't believe it. I'm going to be wearing hats now. And so thank you so much for Taylor for introducing me to this. And if you guys want to check it out, link in the description below.
Now I shift to the opposite side of the layout and paint the road. Now I've already sanded it smooth using a sanding sponge, and now I can paint it. I will be using simple black and gray spray paint. I do quick bursts of mist across the roads to get the desired effect, which means I need to cover up the track with painter's tape. For the crossings, I only paint one side at a time to make it easier, and for the double crossing, I isolate the middle for painting. Now it's time to install the Scenic Base material. This is really where all of your vegetation and everything, this is the base it's going to sit on. I start with white glue in my work area. I then spread some dirt from Scenic Express, but you can actually make your own Scenic Dirt, and I have done this, and I'll link the tutorial. There's two things to notice here. First, notice my tapping motion for dispensing the dirt, and also notice that I poured a small amount of the dirt into the container's cap, and I used that to spread it slowly and evenly. Next, I do a light dusting of Woodland Scenic's burnt grass and dark green fine turf to make my Scenic Base. Then you soak it with either wet water or IPA, and then you apply your 50-50 white glue water mixture to it. Once the road is dried, I add a gravel transition point, since my crossing on this side of the layout is going to be a gravel one. To place the gravel, you use the same technique to apply it. First glue, then the material, Then you soak it with wet water and then apply your 50-50 mixture to it. If you are using an airbrush instead of spray paint, be mindful of where the wet water runs because it can make acrylic paint bleed. I then continue adding the Scenic Base to various places around the layout. In areas where the road is directly adjacent to the dirt, I put a small gravel threshold using a bead of white glue. Notice I have my buildings here for reference. This always helps with scenery. But now I have to take them off and paint all of the bases using Rust-Oleum's Aged Gray. Now for some wiring. Once everything has been really given time to dry, you'll go ahead and flip the layout on its side. We will be installing a bus for the 12-volt lights on this layout. We will be using the same EVE model bus we use for the DCC system. I like these because they have a DC plug and it makes wiring a little easier. I attach the bus, remembering to put spacers in between the bottom of the panel and the wood base. We are going to install lights for the building interiors. We will be controlling them with these switches. We will be installing 4 of these switches total for lights, so I started drilling the necessary holes with a 7/8 inch spade bit. I then put the switches in the corresponding holes I just drilled. I also install another bus, but this time it's for my lower voltage 5-volt lights, which will be my street lights. One good tip to remember is it's always good to try and clean up your workspace as you go. Now I feed the 12-volt LEDs into the holes we drilled in the first episode. Now normally I would solder these connections, but to keep it as simple as possible, I'm going with a solderless method for attaching wire. We will be twisting the wires together and sealing them with heat shrink tubing. I really like this wire because it comes with heat shrink tubing, zip ties, and even a wire stripper. I'll link it below. Once we strip the ends of the wires, we twist them together to attach all the necessary wires in the same fashion. We then slide our piece of heat shrink tubing over the connection and then use a heat gun to seal it up. If you don't have a heat gun, a grill lighter works great for this. Just be mindful of where the flame is so that you don't melt any wire or catch any wood on fire. I then repeat the process for all of the wires. For the wiring setup, you see 3 wires from the switches. One is the overall power, and one powers the LED indicator in the switch. These both need to be connected to the red side of the bus. The black wire of the switch then hooks up to the red end of the LEDs we are using for building lights. We then connect the black wires of the LEDs to the black side of the power bus. And this is done all using the same wire attachment technique. Remember to do a rough pre-measurement of your wire before you cut so that you have the right amount. Once all of the lights are wired up, we can give them a test. And you can see that all of my lights turn on.
So we really accomplished a whole lot today, a lot of detailing done, a lot of things in place, setting up the next episode, which is going to be some detailing work and getting some things really refined. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. That's gonna be coming up in about another 2 weeks. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Special thank you to Mammoth Headwear, sponsor of this episode, and also a big special thank you to our patrons listed right here as always. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that bell icon so you don't miss any updates like this video. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, and happy railroading. Thank you so much. If you would like to check this out, if you are like me and you are well endowed in the head, that was going well.